Alright, so this is going to be part 1 to what if Deku had the power of Gauss from Warframe. So there might be some of you in my audience that haven't played Warframe, so I'm going to explain kind of the skills that he has, the abilities, and not really go into the lore because we're not going to really use it too much. So in this, we're not going to have Deku be a Tenno like I have, like, it's not going to be like my Destiny what if where he is a Guardian, and in this one he would have been a Tenno, but he's not going to be a Tenno in this one. He's actually just going to have it as a quirk. So let's go for the abilities to make this easier for everyone to know. So his passive is basically when Gauss moves, he generates energy, and this energy is stored in a battery that helps him in like using his abilities. Well, it gives bonuses to his abilities, and it also helps him recharge his shield faster. So let's go to the first ability, and that's going to be Mach Rush. So this gives him a very fast sprint, and this charges his battery every time he uses it. And if he crashes into a solid object, this creates a powerful kind of shockwave. So next ability is Kinetic Plating. This generates armor plating that covers Gauss, and this absorbs some of the energy that is thrown to him, and this gives him the ability to charge his battery in some cases depending on what energy he absorbs, as well as give him the ability to not be staggered or knocked down. So that's very useful. Next is Thermal Sunder. This gives him the ability to basically make a siphon of that siphons kind of kinetic energy in an area, and this charges the battery depending on how he uses it, because there's two ways of using it. One is he's able to make it do cold damage, and the other is making it use heat damage, and depending on which one he uses, it will charge or drain his battery. And if he uses both of them together, then this will cause an explosion and cause enemies to either be blown away or sucked in. And yeah, next is Redline. Redline, it gives Gauss the ability to basically push his battery and supercharge his abilities. This makes him increase, the fire rate, attack speed, reload speed, holster rate, and things like that. It also gives him the ability when his battery is overcharged to shoot bolts of arcing electricity that kind of shoot out of him, doing massive amount of damage to enemies around him. So in this one, Deku is going to be a little bit different in terms of how his appearance is. So this is actually going to be a mutation quirk, so he's going to look like Gauss. You see Gauss in the image that I'm going to use for this video, and basically that's what he's going to look like for the most part. Obviously it's going to be a little bit different because he's going to be younger, right? This would be Deku as an adult. So yeah, he's going to have, so this is going to be a quirk, so he's not going to be a Tenno, and he's not going to be able to control a Warframe, but he's actually just going to have the abilities. So he's going to look like Gauss, and this is going to be a mutation quirk / transformation quirk, and I'm going to get into that a little bit later into the story when I actually say it. So Deku would have been born looking like Gauss because that's how mutation works, or mutation type quirks work in My Hero, to what I remember. So when he's younger, he's going to be very fast. Obviously he's not going to be fast as the full potential of Mach Rush, because Mach Rush, if we go by the name alone, it's going to be the speed, it's going to be around the same speed of the speed of sound, which is around 761 miles per hour, or if you don't live in the US, 1225 kilometers per hour. So that's very fast. So we're not going to give him that much just yet. He's going to get it pretty early in life, not just when he's born or even the few years of schooling. He's going to get it around middle school, around that kind of speed or level of speed. So as he's growing up, obviously he would have met Bakugo, and since he has a mutation quirk, he would have had his quirk immediately. So he's not going to be born with all abilities at once. So right now he only really has the battery as well as the Mach Rush. So he would have met Bakugo, and I think they would have been kind of close friends, having that kind of rivalry, because Deku's very fast while Bakugo is very explosive and, well, let's just say does a lot of damage. So Deku, for his quirk, we're gonna call it Crash and Burn, maybe. I'm not sure exactly what we should call the quirk. You guys can tell me down below what you want to see it be named. But yeah, let's get back into the story. So as the years go on, Deku actually learns more abilities, such as the kinetic plating, which he would learn around, I would say, maybe the beginning of middle school, and then halfway through middle school, this was where he would learn Thermal Sunder, and by the end of middle school, he would learn Red Line. So he's training his quirk a lot, and one thing he learns is that if he crashes into stuff, he creates almost like an explosion. It creates a shockwave, and that's why I really call it Crash and Burn. And he's not really hurt when he does this. In fact, he's actually pretty fine. So this is where he gets the idea to train and see if he could do more stuff, and that's when he learns the other abilities. So Deku in this one, by the end of middle school, he has mastered his Mach Rush, so he's as fast as sound when he uses it, and the other kind of abilities are pretty much somewhat close to completion. So armor or kinetic plating is probably the one that's closest to being finished, because that is just, what it sounds like. It's just kind of like armor. So as the years go by, this is going to be the end of middle school, and this is where the teacher actually tells the class that there are two students trying to get into UA, one being Bakugo and the other one being Deku. Deku wouldn't have the same nickname as he has in the past, that being Deku, so people would just call him Midoriya, or even something different, something to do with speed probably. But let's get back into the story. So everyone would have been cheering, because they would have seen, it's kind of obvious for them to see that Bakugo and Deku would have wanted to go to UA because of how powerful their quirks are, especially Deku, since he has technically like a couple different abilities that go with his quirk. So this is also around the time that Deku actually learns what he could do, or not just with the abilities, but another thing that he could do. And this is where the transformation part of his quirk actually pops in. So in Warframe, you're actually able to get out of your Warframe and be the Tenno to kind of use abilities that are unique to the Tenno, that being things like teleportation, making like rings that charge energy, going invisible, and things like that, shooting beams. And that's what Deku learns. He learns that he's able to transform that into a human, but this human version of himself has a different power, and that is the Tenno's kind of power. So I'm not sure about all the kind of abilities, I know a few, but let's just say for now he has short range teleportation as well as the kind of beam attack. So he has that in his mind just in case he's gonna need it, because something like Mach Rush is only really horizontal, not vertical. So you might need that vertical momentum or teleportation in the future. So let's get on to the story. And this is after Deku leaves school and goes home, he actually goes for the shortcut. So Deku, even without his Mach Rush, he would have been naturally faster. So by the time he gets to the underneath the bridge, he's kind of a little bit far away from it, but he sees something coming out of the sewer, because he would have heard something rustling down in the sewers. And this is where the sludge villain actually comes out, and he sees Deku and he wants to basically go and attack him. And Deku sees that this person or thing isn't really the friendliest, so he decides to kind of defend himself. So he uses a Mach Rush, and he basically hits the sludge villain directly, and this gives him enough force to actually go through the sludge villain and actually kind of splatter him all over the place because of how fast he's going. So the speed of sound is very fast compared to the My Hero universe, because there aren't many heroes, or even heroes in general, that could really match up to that speed. So yeah, because of that, he gets splattered, and then he reforms, trying to get Deku's body again. And Deku didn't hit a wall this time, so he wasn't like splattered even further, to the point where it would have taken some time to regenerate. But it is enough for Deku to turn around and face this person. So Deku would have had a full battery because of how much he's been walking. It only takes a little bit to really charge the battery. So this is where the sludge villain would try to surround Deku, and Deku would use thermal sunder, I believe it's called, and this would actually, he would use the cold variant of it, so this would freeze, or it would slow down the sludge villain by a lot because he's getting frozen. And he uses a second one, and this actually completely freezes the sludge villain. So when you use the same element twice on the thermal sunder, it makes it more effective. So if he uses the cold twice, instead of slowing, it actually freezes. So that's how it works. So eventually All Might would come, and this is where he would see Deku in his he would still have his school uniform, because even though he has a mutation quirk, it's not too much off from, an actual human kind of body, right? So he would have still been able to use his school uniform. So All Might sees that he's a middle schooler, sees that he was able to beat down this villain, and he's very impressed by it. He asks Deku for his name, and he says it's Izuku Midoriya, and All Might tries to remember this. And since Deku, I would say he would have a lot of confidence in his speed and his quirk in general, so I don't think he'd be that timid kind of person that he was in the series. So I think in this one he would straight up ask All Might for an autograph just so he could have it, right? In this one, he would still be a fan, just like most people in the My Hero universe. So All Might would give him a signed autograph, and he'd be on his way. So Deku would start his kind of training and trying to upgrade his abilities and see how far he can go. So that's what he does over the 9 months. So what he would do really, or the 10 months is he would try to run as far as he could, as long as he could, with some sort of weights to make him kind of weigh him down. So he doesn't have anything that really would help him at this point. So he goes looking around, and this is where he would find the beach. So there's a lot of trash there, and there's a lot of heavy kind of scrap metal and things like that would really help him in this case, because normal weights aren't really gonna help him. So that's what he does. He goes along the beach and basically carries this trash, almost tied behind his back basically. And as he's doing this, he slowly cleans up the beach. So he's really trying to up his Mach Rush as well as his red line. So the red line, his ability, he's using that in tandem with his Mach Rush. So this is where he achieves levels of speed even higher than it was before, because Mach Rush increases your battery as well as your abilities. This is where his Mach Rush actually does the arcs of lightning that he was doing before, or I mentioned before. So this is where he unlocks that kind of sub ability for his red line. So after the 9 months, or the 10 months he goes and enters the UA exam. I think he would get around the same amount that he did in the anime, and he would be sitting by Bakugo, and I think Bakugo's personality would change a bit more than it was in canon. He wouldn't be as aggressive, at least towards normal people, and he wouldn't be as arrogant or rude, I would say, because he has the person to kind of pull him back, and that's really Deku. So Deku sees Bakugo as, almost basically it's his best friend, or his best friend, because they spend so much time together and they're always trying to up one each other. They have this kind of rivalry to a certain extent, not too much, but it is still there. Both of them still want to be the number one hero. So we would get to the practical part of the exam, and this is the part with the robots. Deku would be almost in a kind of runner or sprinter's kind of stance, that kind of almost kneeling. And he wouldn't have met Uraraka because he wouldn't have tripped even going in, or he wouldn't have tripped. So he, because of his confidence, basically. So as they get entered the kind of arena or the city, kind of this is where Deku basically just blitzes everyone, right? He uses his Mach Rush, charges in, hits a robot, creates a huge kind of shockwave, destroying a nearby robot, and continues to do more. So he just keeps on running, and more. And this is where he would rack up so many points. So eventually, this is the point where everyone would start running, and because of the 0-pointer coming towards everyone, Deku would see that everyone's running, and this is where he would hear a scream, and this scream would come from a girl, and that being Uraraka. So Deku doesn't really know how to really approach this because he sees this giant robot. So what he does is that he turns into his Tenno form and actually uses this to teleport up top a building. It's somewhat kind of far, not exactly super close to the robot, but enough to gain some speed. So what Deku does is that he activates red line at the exact time as using kinetic. He uses kinetic plating as well as Mach Rush, and he's just running towards this robot, now at around eye level to the robot. So he starts running, and this charges his battery to the point it starts shooting arcs of lightning. And he actually runs until he jumps off the building and actually hits the robot directly with his Mach Rush. This causes him to basically create this giant shockwave, and as well as having the battery of his being basically drained at the same time, creating a giant explosion because of how redline works. So that giant explosion of electricity as well as the shockwave would have been enough to basically destroy the robot's head, or it would have been enough to make it basically it would do enough damage to make the robot stop. And after that, this is where Deku would start falling, but he's not really worried about it. So his battery is dead, but that doesn't mean he can't use abilities. His battery only is there for really to charge or really enhance his abilities, but he can still use stuff like Mach Rush and things like that. So he uses it mid-air and he starts moving it. He only what he does with Mach Rush is that he uses it for like a second so he could get further to the ground, but also a little bit further away so he doesn't hurt anyone. So he lands somewhere close to Uraraka, but not directly since he doesn't want to hurt her. This doesn't cause the explosion of the shockwave because he wasn't using Mach Rush when he crashed, basically. So he would get up pretty unscathed because Tennos don't really take fall damage. So we're gonna kind of implement that into this with Deku being able to use Mach Rush to save him from that. But yeah. So he would get Uraraka out of the kind of rubble for Recovery Girl to heal him. So at this point, Uraraka doesn't really know who this person is because she never was given a name, as well as thinking that he was wearing some kind of suit of some sort because of how Gauss kind of looks and how most of the Warframes look. So she doesn't really know who this person was. She just knows that he has a speed quirk and things like that. So yeah. So this is gonna be the end of the video. If you liked it, please give it a like. If this video gets to, let's say, 100 likes, we'll make a part 2 to it, as well as making more parts in the future. So yeah. So before I go, I want to say a few things, that being some announcements, I guess. I've been thinking of doing some sort of like short story reading, so all kinds of reading, whether it be comedy, horror, sci-fi, things like that. So even things like creepypasta would be a good example of that. So if you have anything you want me to read, then you could post it down in the comments. I would suggest just leaving the title and maybe the author's name, because if you put like a link, sometimes YouTube will detect that as spam, and your comment will be deleted. I've never deleted a comment, so if your comment no longer appears, that's probably why. It's probably because it was reported or YouTube thinks it's spam. So if you have an idea of a short story I could read, then you could post it in the comments. So yeah, I'm gonna do other Warframe videos probably in the future, and yeah. So also we gotta talk about, we're almost at 4K subscribers. So as many of you have guessed, I'm gonna do What If Nafumi Was a Spear Hero. So look forward to that in the future. That's probably gonna be my 1K special. I'm not sure if I'm gonna finish it by then, but yeah. If you like this video, like I said, give it a like. If you made it to the end of the video, please comment down CS so I know that you support the channel. And with that being said, this is gonna be in the video. So yeah.